So we're going to get into the scoring offense now. And this is another interesting one because Notre Dame's scoring offense right now is not as good as its numbers show. Notre Dame obviously ranks 38th in scoring at 35.3 yards per game or points per game. That's obviously up from last year when Notre Dame was 33.4. But again, you're coming off a game in which you scored 21 points without your offense. And, obviously Notre Dame in the last 2 games has scored in the 20-point range against 2 Big Ten teams. Because obviously they had 27 points against Toledo, against Purdue, and then they scored really only, 20 points defensively or offensively. So Notre Dame's numbers are a little bit misleading. If you actually look at what last week's is, Notre Dame right now is only averaging 30 points a game of just pure offense, which would rank them right now. 30 points a game would rank them. Let me pull it up here. Scoring offense would rank the offense 64th, would tie them with Charlotte, would put them behind Central Michigan. So, so that's to me that the 91 and 96 is more indicative of where the Notre Dame offense has been right now. It's an offense that's not scoring at a high level. They've had to rely on big plays to score, as you see there from their red zone offense. They've only made 9 trips into the red zone this season in 4 games. That's not a lot. A part of that is a positive in the fact that they have ripped off some big plays. I mean, they've had big plays they've had big scoring plays in each of their 3 games. You had a 30-plus yard touchdown against Florida State. You had a 55-yard touchdown and a 43-yard touchdown against Toledo. You had a 43-yard touchdown and a 51-yard touchdown against Purdue. And then obviously this past week you had a 36-yard touchdown from Kevin Austin. That meant you're not getting into the red zone because you're scoring from further out. So that's part of it. I mean, they have been a big play offense this year, but the other part of it is they're a real inefficient team. I mean, go look at the third down offense. The third down offense fits in perfectly with your red zone touchdown offense, which fits in with your yards per play, which fits in your yards per game. At the end of the day, a lot of that boils down to lack of first down success. Notre Dame has not been good on first down. They are getting in a lot of third and longs the last couple weeks. And the red zone started off well, and it has not been as good in the last couple games as they've played against Power 5 teams. Cincinnati, on the other hand, to me also is a little bit misleading because when you look at Cincinnati, they've played Miami of Ohio, Murray State, and Indiana. Not exactly defensive juggernauts. They did not get to 400 yards of offense against Murray State. They did not get to 350 yards against Indiana. They averaged 3.5 or 4.6 yards per play against Indiana. And Indiana's a tough, gritty team, but Cincinnati's 4.6 yards per play was the second lowest number that Cincinnati's given up all year. Indiana gave up 7.2 yards per play to Western Kentucky. They gave up 4.7 yards per play to an Iowa offense that has stunk so far this year. So to me, this Cincinnati defense is good. Their offense is not a real dynamic group, as I just talked about. And then you look at their defense, and I think you can make a similar case about Cincinnati's defense, and this is why I kind of point out. And, their defense gave up 4.9 yards per play to Indiana. And again, Indiana's offense this year has not been lights out. They averaged 4.9 against Cincinnati, which is the second highest that they've had. So the Cincinnati offense had sort of their the third best performance against Indiana. The Cincinnati defense had the third, Indiana had their second best game against Indiana defense. They went for 4.8 against Idaho. So basically the Cincinnati defense had the same amount of success against Indiana statistically as Idaho did. So I don't think that the Cincinnati defense has been necessarily lights out this year. I don't think they've played any good teams. Indiana, as Vince, you and I talked about when we watched that game play, Indiana should have blown Cincinnati out.
No question.
I mean, they
had every opportunity to.
Yes.
They had every opportunity to put their quote unquote, their foot on the throat of Cincinnati. Yeah. And Cincinnati's offense, and we'll talk more about them tomorrow, but Cincinnati's offense isn't, hugely explosive. They can score, don't get me wrong, but if you get them in that big of a hole, it's going to be very tough for them to come back. And if any team, really, you get down 24 points, I mean, that's tough to come back from. You're outside your game plan, right? This defense can be scored on. I do firmly believe that, but you do have to have some modicum amount of balance in order to keep this defense on their heels, and you also need to have some creative play calling. And I see people over in the chat calling for it. Of course, we're calling for it as well. Screens and working horizontal, and we've been calling for jets and things of that nature for a long time as well. I think this is the perfect game to implement a lot of that. I really, really do. But I don't know if they're going to. Maybe that's just not part of their offense, or maybe they're holding it back for this. I don't know what the deal is. I've seen them practice some of it, so I know that they've got it, but they just haven't, for whatever reason, utilized it in a game yet.
Right. I want to pull something up because some of these comments aren't making sense. RPO is killing the offensive line. If you think the RPO is killing the offensive line, I don't think you understand what an RPO is.
I completely agree.
The
with
RPO
that.
has nothing to do with the offensive line.
Nothing.
They're blocking like they would any other play. If a tight end is attached to the line of scrimmage, he's blocking like he would any other play. RPOs have nothing to do with the offensive line. The offensive line blocks a run play. It's as simple as that. So I don't have a clue what that comment means. Look, here's the other thing. I've seen people say that the offense only scored. I've seen this. The offense only scored 14 points against Wisconsin because the special teams had field goals are not credited to the special teams. You can't kick a field goal because of what you do on defense, or you have to have an offensive drive unless you get a short field, which didn't happen. Notre Dame's field goals came from drives that the offense put together.
Correct.
The difference between that and a kick return is the offense has nothing to do with the kick return. The kick return does that. The punt returners do that.
Yeah, that's 100%.
Field goals are go to the offense.
Yes.
So if you're going to try to say the other thing, then you're looking to create you have an idea, an opinion that you're then trying to spin things into to back up that opinion. Okay. The offense has its problems. We can point out those problems without making faulty arguments that make it seem like the offense is worse than it is. So let's not get into that. Okay. And we're not going to continue doing that. But back to this point that we were talking about, Vince, so Cincinnati, or early in the game, Indiana took a 7-0 lead on Cincinnati.
It was a great drive.
Right.
It was a good drive.
Oh yeah. Really good drive.
Yeah.
Punted the ball. Cincinnati punted. Indiana got it back.
3 and out. They were 3 and out on that drive. Yeah.
Indiana went down and drove it into the red zone, had it a 4th and goal or 4th down at like the 10-yard line. Instead of kicking a field goal, go up 10-0, they went for it on downs and didn't get it. Cincinnati goes 6 plays, 15 yards, punts it back to Indiana. Indiana gets the ball, good field position. They drive down, and they throw an interception in the end zone. At worst, it should have been 13-0. It was a horrible pass by Michael Penix. Threw it way behind the guy. If he just throws it away or makes a better throw, at worst, it's 13-0 because they should have kicked the field goal on when they were up 7-0. Then Cincinnati fumbles the ball, and Indiana gets it deep in their territory, and they score a touchdown to make it 14-0.
Right.
Well, heck, that should have been 20-0 right there.
At the least.
So I mean, that was an opportunity where and then Cincinnati did a nice job of their next drive going down the field and getting a touchdown, making it 14-7. And then Indiana threw another pick, and it was 14-10, and that's kind of how the game went. But they had every opportunity in the world, in my opinion, to just run Cincinnati off the field, and they missed those opportunities.
Right.
Notre Dame can't afford to do that. They have to get Cincinnati's defense on its heels early. That's going to be the key for me in this game, Vince, is can they do things pre-snap from a motion, formation, alignment, moving guys around standpoint? Can they do enough things where you aggressive? You have to be aggressive. You have to you have to go after their aggressiveness with your own aggressiveness. That's going to be the key. If you're willing to do that, then they can go out and have success against Cincinnati this weekend with big plays. Because here's the one advantage that we've got to talk about for all the issues Notre Dame has had. They're a big play offense. What is Cincinnati's biggest vulnerability, Vince?
Big plays.
Big plays.
And we talked about that before the season even started with Marcus Freeman's defense. I mean, and it's still his defense. I don't care who's calling the shots. It's still his defense. And they're still going to be susceptible to the same stuff that they were when he was there. So big plays. That absolutely correct.
Right. So that's kind of that breakdown, Vince. That's where we see it. Let's go run game advantage. We go advantage Cincinnati on that.
Absolutely.
I think every team is going to get. I would probably give Navy's defense the advantage right now against Notre Dame's run game until they show me differently. Pass game to me is more of a wash.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's a wash. I think that Notre Dame has some opportunities there. It just comes down to the offensive line. Can they protect? Because the one thing we didn't talk about is that bottom number right down here. This one right here.
20 seconds.
And that's why right now I have to give the edge right now to Cincinnati's defense over Notre Dame's offense, just because of what we see on paper. But if the game plan is sound, if the offensive line just plays mediocre football, this I do think Notre Dame should have the matchup advantage. They should. But we also can't give it. Yes, could and should.
Yeah.
But they don't right now based on what we've seen.
Yeah, I agree with that. And based on everything that we just said, that we just talked about, I mean, if you're giving Cincinnati the edge in the run game and you're making it a wash in the pass game, then you have to give Cincinnati the edge here. I mean, that's just common sense, right? And again, we're looking at paper. But again, I would not be overly surprised if we saw, I have very similar feelings from a score standpoint that I had last week. Right. I think Notre Dame could squeak out a win, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was by a couple scores, at the end of the day. If the offense can come around and they can put some points on the board, I still have a lot of faith in Marcus Freeman's defense. Yeah. And of course, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But this side of the ball has to come to play. It's a home game. You got the winning streak on the line. You got your pride on the line. Frankly, you have your season on the line. Everything that they're trying to accomplish with their season is on the line tomorrow. You can't lose to a non-Power 5 team and expect to be able to compete for what you want to compete for. It just is what is. As good as Cincinnati is, right? The knock is going to be you lost to a non-Power 5 team, and you shouldn't be, in the conversation. And this is going to determine what their season looks like.
This is not a game you should lose at home. I don't care how good Cincinnati is.
You can't.
You shouldn't.
I agree.
And this is the side of the ball that's going to determine that. If they play their game, if they get back to kind of being that multiple moving around movement, use your speed to your advantage, because Cincinnati is a team built on speed on defense. Yes. They cannot match Notre Dame man for man in speed. You have to take advantage of that.
Correct.
And that's ultimately going to be the key. I do want to respond to this. In RPO, you need O-line with mobility, not chunky O-linemen. Again, false.
It's Alabama. Run game.
Alabama ran RPOs all year last year, and all they have is chunky offensive linemen. So again, James, with all due respect, I don't think you understand what an RPO is. RPOs have nothing to do with the run plays you're calling. You can run any run concept you want. You can run power. You can do anything you want. RPO has nothing to do with that at all. Nothing. So with all due respect, I would encourage you to go back and watch the RPO video that we did this summer, because it explains what an RPO is. I don't know what your misunderstanding is, but you have, I think, a very fundamental misunderstanding of what an RPO is. RPOs to me in this game, however, I don't think are necessarily going to be the end-all be-all unless you're taking shots. That is the one thing I would like to see them maybe do, is take some RPO shots in this game, Vince, because they're such an aggressive defense with their coverages. A lot of that quick game stuff that you like to do on the RPOs isn't really going to be there. If you're going to take some shots, meaning ride it out and pull and throw a post behind it, that stuff could be there. They're going to play a lot of cover one, which is going to get you in some opportunities to drop back and take some shots. So I think those are things that we need to see. Big plays are going to be the key. Kyron Williams, Chris Tyree, Braden Lindsey, Kevin Austin, Avery Davis, Michael Mayer, plenty of big play weapons.
Yep. It's
going to be up to Tommy Rees and his staff to design ways to try to free him up. And this is going to be a big game for Tommy Rees, in my opinion. How does he adjust? How does he make changes to what they've done to adapt to what Cincinnati does, plus what his team is good at? You've got 4 games with this offense now. You know what Braden Lindsey can and can't do. You know what Kevin Austin can and can't do. Start building around their strengths. In his defense, he hasn't really called a lot of games with Braden Lindsey and Kevin Austin until now. But you got 4 games now to see, okay, maybe we need to try something a little different with Braden, right? Those are going to be the keys to the game. So